I was just listening to a song this morning from Tom York's newest band where he sings, "So overconfident, that's another red flag." And I thought, well, I need to do a red flags of emotional repression on overconfidence. So here it is. Now, if you watch these videos, you've probably heard me talk about how there's generally two types of emotion repressors. There's anger repressors on one hand and hurt repressors or vulnerable emotion repressors on the other. And overconfidence, overcompensation is generally associated with hurt and vulnerable emotion repression, but I've seen it sort of across the board. So I want to talk about how it manifests for each type. So first, if you're someone who in childhood was conditioned to primarily repress vulnerable emotions like hurt and sadness, then you're going to be someone who is compelled to show up in the world as, confident, tough, strong, self-assured, right? When it comes to anything emotional, we often hear rhetoric from hurt and vulnerable emotion repressors like, "I'm a survivor, the past is the past, get over it, you got to man up, you got to move on." If we were to translate this into the voice of emotional repression, it would sound something like, "I am terrified to know and show my hurt, my grief, and my vulnerability to other people, so please don't show me yours." So if you are, or if you know someone who is confident at the expense of these emotions, then that is overcompensation or fake confidence. Real confidence for a hurt or vulnerable emotion repressor would look like someone who's confident but could cry or who could say ouch. Now, I'm an anger repressor, and I definitely was an overcompensating, overconfident kid when I was in high school. For me, this showed up as successful people pleasing, right? Or sort of acting cool or being everybody's friend. At that point, I just thought that's who I was. I was unaware of the vat of repressed anger that was in my body that was forcing me to show up in the world in that way. I had no idea about that because I hadn't suffered enough yet under the weight of my identity. We see this a lot, I think, with young people who are sort of like trying to find themselves or create the best version of themselves. I'm going out in the world and this is me, right? It's pretty innocent. But again, the thing to watch for is finding you or creating you or being you happening at the expense of any particular emotion. Not till later, probably in my early to mid 30s, did I start to go, wow, being me sucks, and being me sucked because the me that I was being was keeping me from accessing these buried emotions, right? Which are the root of suffering. Now, if somebody had told me in my teens and 20s, you're repressing anger, I probably would have outwardly said, "What are you talking about?" Right? Like, I'm the cool kid. I don't really feel much of anything. But inwardly, I might have gone, "Oh shit, they see me. Busted." But here's the funny thing about that. Being busted or busting oneself is actually the doorway to freedom from suffering. When I was in my late 30s and early 40s, I started to realize that I had buried anger and that I'd been repressing it for 30 plus years, and that it was causing my depression, my anxiety, my addictive impulses, and all types of weird forms of suffering. For instance, people pleasing, or feeling like I was a fake or a fraud a lot of the time, except for when I was alone. And I also remember feeling like this about a lot of other people. Whether they played big or they played small, it just felt like these people are fake. Well, it turns out we were and are. A lot of people go their entire lives not knowing that there's buried emotions in their unconscious that are creating their particular suffering state, whether it be overconfidence or coolness or depression or addiction or people pleasing or invulnerability. The list just goes on and on. I sometimes say to people when they come into the Kill a Bee inquiries or KI and start doing emotional repression work to get to the root of suffering and resolve it, stop trusting your suffering, right? Stop trusting it. You put a lot of faith in the belief that you're depressed or that there's something wrong with you or that you're tough or that you're weak, right? But all of that is a smokescreen, yeah? It's fake. It's keeping you from recognizing the real culprit, which is the buried emotions and the repression of them in the body that is creating, driving, and sustaining your suffering. Now, listen, don't form a belief around what I'm saying here either, right? Like you did probably around depression or anxiety or defectiveness. Instead, check for yourself and check in your body, right? Think of it this way. You couldn't ever really find depression or find anxiety or overcompensation or defectiveness in your body, right? They're concepts, but you can find buried emotions and you can clear the body of them and you can end suffering. Learn how to do that right here.